Hi, I'm John Dutton, and tonight we're doing Spilled Ink, a socially distanced Spilled Ink from Alice Mergler's patio. And so I have Paulette Gardner and Alice Mergler here with me on this beautiful night. And it should be a great night. We already have 15 people here, so welcome to Spilled Ink. And here's, there we go. School has started, and we've been talking about how lovely virtual teaching is. The one great thing about it is we start the day book, the writing journal, the writing notebook, and I think a lot of the kids are having fun with it. You got to turn down the volume, Alice. All right, I think. All right. I think a lot of the kids are having fun with it, and I'm enjoying it, writing along with them. This one was called Monster Within. The prompt, I found like 30 October writing prompts and about Halloween and monsters and funny, humorous monsters. This one was called, the writing prompt, Monster Within. And it's not finished, but I'll read what I have. I just left my twin brother's funeral, and I'm still wondering why he passed away so young. I'm sitting up here in his attic. I've sent his wife away, and I'm going through his stuff. She's never going to be able to go through all of this stuff by herself. So I'm here to volunteer my help. You know, I was up there in that attic going through a few boxes of my brother's things when I discovered something odd. It was an old leather satchel with a letter in a white brand new envelope sticking out of the closed flap. That satchel, oh my gosh, that satchel had better days because it was very, very old. And that was the odd thing. The oddest thing was that the letter was addressed to me. I sat there and I sat Indian style on the dirty floor, and I ripped open the letter and I read it, and my mind raced with fear. I grabbed the satchel and ran down the stairs and out the front door. And that was Monster Within. So I had a good time with that. I think the kids are having a good time. So we'll continue that. All right, let me see. I'm going to say that let's go for the person who was the long distance call. We'll go with Lucy Koons from International Waters. Go ahead, Lucy.
Bless you. I appreciate that because it's after 2 a.m. here.
Oh, wow.
So I'm not sure how long I can last. Okay, so I have 2 pieces, and the poem is called Woe to the Country, and it's inspired by Khalil Gibran's poem, The Garden of the Prophet. Woe to the country that wears a shirt it does not weave, eats fruit it does not harvest, drinks water that flows not from its own springs. Woe to the country that celebrates the bully as hero, deems cruelty as blessed by God, boasts success among its ruins. Woe to the country that despises equity in its dreams, loves darkness in its awakening, rebels against its people, but not injustice. Woe to the country that lifts not its voice against tyrants, against corruption, against cruelty, except when its neck is laid between the rough road and the boot. Woe to the country whose governors are actors, whose legislators are jugglers, whose judges are conspirators on a stage of smoke and mirrors. Woe to the country whose wise men stink with decay, and whose youth snuggle deeper into the cradle of their iPhones. Woe to the country divided into tribes, each tribe believing itself a blessed nation. The end. And the second piece is a song I wrote. I've never written song lyrics before.
Oh, wow.
So, but I'm not singing it.
Mike Crowley might take this and put it into verse because Mike loves to sing. So maybe he'll like it. So yes, Mike Crowley is our lyricist. All right,
great.
Lucy, take it away.
Okay, well, there is a tune. We just need some chords for it. It's called Beneath the Redbud Tree. Will you still serenade me when I'm unfortunate and old? Will you warm my chapped hands when we walk in the cold? Will you look deep in my eyes and love only me? Will you carry my breath beneath the redbud tree? Love can smell fragile. Love can touch sweet. Love is a heavy bloom born of the redbud tree. So play our love song. Let me feel your steady beat. Serenade me forever beneath the redbud tree. The end.
Nice.
Nice, nicely done, nicely done. Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you.
Enjoy your sleep. I know it's late, so thank you for coming and participating. It was wonderful. So thank you for that very much.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
I'll stay on as long as I can.
Qatar. She's over. Yeah, Qatar. Yeah, Qatar. All right. Let's see. Let's go Hiram. Hiram, you're up.
I have a feeling he didn't
Thanks,
hear
John.
you.
Yeah, thanks, John. I'm going to post something in the chat room, I believe. Here, let me see if I can. Yeah, about an upcoming event on November 1st at 10:30 in the morning. That's a Sunday morning, East Coast time. About 4 poets, 3 African Americans and myself, visited a place called Woodlawn Plantation Estate in Fairfax, Virginia. And we wrote about what must have been the basically now erased lives of the 90 slaves who served 9 whites living in Woodlawn. And we're presenting those poems in a program called Voices of Woodlawn. And we'll be presenting it, as I say, on November 1st. If you can join us, that would be wonderful. I'll read a poem titled Custard, and it's kind of about my reckoning with history. Custard as like the pudding, or like a pudding, custard. From this far away, the Civil War and Revolutionary War seem like custard to me. That's not to minimize their horrors, but it is to say that I have learned to accept my aging face as well as all the sweets that come like ghostings. It's to say that I've been like muskets along the way and feel like ambushed sparks. I've also bandaged ooze and piped whistles, and even now I listen hard to whatever great-grandfathers growl from bed whenever they want to. I've held West Virginia close as any maiden aunt would, and I've tasted puddings and seen storms in cornfields. Nothing else surrounds my years as such knowing does. Nothing else silhouettes my insides as candles can. and surely nothing will ever race down my ravines, cap in hand, like these chills do now. Thanks, John.
Thank you. Thank you, Hiram. I appreciate you stopping. And I did put that message on the Facebook page. I typed that message right under yours. So
thank you.
If you need it, it's also on the Facebook page.
Thank you.
You got it. Let's go, Brian. Brian Donald James.
Hey, good evening, everybody. How y'all doing?
Hello.
All right. I have three kind of short ones. The first one is a rewritten piece called Love Purgatory. It's rewritten. Love Purgatory. If heaven hath not you in the afterworld of our love, I will await in the shadows and light. As the moon is replaced 1,000 times over, I will rise, I will fall. As the oceans of the world become ice and thaw into rivers, I will hover, I will soar. Let my next world be purgatory. I would rather reside there, somewhere between paradise and hell. Let the tally of my blessings and sins be measured. I am content. I am patient. I will await the rebirth. And if heaven hath not you in the afterworld of our love, I will await in the shadows and light. Thank you. The next one is a bit of a sarcastic piece. I can be a little bit sarcastic. It's called Chasing the Muse. How can one create with squirrels running in the attic, scurrying and gnawing? How can one create when there are garbage trucks moving like steel vessels on the black seas of my street, with loud sailors tending to the mast, jumping to and fro, seizing booty and debris and returning like worker ants to their queen? How can one create when there are teenagers blasting hip hop outside my window, cursing and yelling the N-word? They say they seized this word, shot it down by slave masters on southern plantations to reverse its meaning. And so after 30 years of gangster rap, this reasoning is just stupid. How can one create? A word, one lovely word is what I need to release the muse. One word to piece poetry together like a jigsaw puzzle and remove my anxiety. Perhaps I would start with the squirrels. How can one create? Thank you.
Nice.
And that was fantastic. I love that.
Thank you. And then the last one is called Toys. I read this last night with Brother Hiram. We were blessed to be in a Canadian event. It was wonderful. I think you might like it. Toys. He aligns his toys in straight lines and stacks his blocks by 6 in perfect columns. He jumps up and down with enthusiasm, for his autism speaks in action. At the moment, he prefers the color green and is reluctant to noise. So he sets his hands upon his ears and disappears in solitude. I am left to await his return. Because I love him so, I've learned to enter a room quietly, to sit and await his attention. Just like his toys, I remain silent for his acknowledgement. He surveys me and in time grants a smile and then a sudden warm hug. He giggles within my arms, cocks his head to the side and stares as if to say, "Don't worry, Grandpa, I'm in control," and then runs down the hall with glee. Yes, we are all his toys. My heart burns with joy, literally burns with joy, a spectrum of emotion within, aching and hurting, with happiness, with hope. I shed a tear in joy for this lovely boy, my genius. Thank you.
Oh, that was awesome. Thank you, Brian. That was, yep. Oh, yep. Oh, fantastic. All right. let's go. Gail, this is Gail's first time Zooming, a long time. So Gail, let's try it. You're gonna have to unmute yourself. Let's see if.
Okay, I thought I was. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Okay. Well, this one, I was going to read on the day we were shut down, I guess. And sorry for the glare, but I do need my glasses. So this is called Not Me Too. When the Me Too movement hit, it shed light on the treatment of women in high profile occupations and is gradually filtering down, this is old, of course, gradually filtering down to those in lower profile ones, such as restaurant and hotel workers. I figure every woman who's ever held a paying job is looking back at her own experiences of sexual harassment in the workplace. What boss took or tried to take advantage of me, threatened my job if I didn't submit? I started wondering how many and which men had negatively affected or traumatized me while I was on the job. I got nothing. That made me one of the lucky ones, right? Wait a minute. Why had no one tried to take advantage of me? That was hard to ask myself at first. Was I not attractive? I wasn't a beauty, but I was okay looking. I had guys noticing me through high school, but they didn't approach me because I wasn't allowed to socialize. By the way, that word didn't exist back then. I was labeled stuck up, and therefore no boys wanted to even bother with me. My first boyfriend found the real me in my senior year. He was the school's tough guy. So if I was good enough for him, I was good enough to be friends with other guys. The girls still thought I was stuck up, but they were probably concerned about my being friends with the boys. Since I'd been a tomboy, being with boys was easy. I was among the first few women admitted to Lafayette College in 1970. On top of that, there were only about 20 Black students, so there weren't many of us girls. My roommate, who was also Black, excuse me, became a good friend, but my best friends were 4 boys, one of which became a love of my life. Occasionally, 1 or 2 others would hang out with us. The girls didn't like that. I was always surrounded by 4 to 6 boys. Except for classes studying in dorms, we were always together. On weekends, we went to the frat houses for music and free-flowing beer. One day, we went to the wrong frat house. They called us niggers, and one of them threw a cup of beer at me. My 5 guys were ready to fight for what he'd done to me, but I screamed at them to let's get the hell out of there. When I joined the Army right after graduating, I went through training at Fort McClellan, Alabama, and Fort Devens, Massachusetts, before being assigned to a unit where I was one of 2 women. She married one of the guys, so I was left as the only female. We traveled a lot, but I never had any issues. Of course, there were sexist jokes, but I gave as good as I got. I earned their respect as one of the guys because there was nothing they did that I couldn't or wouldn't do. Often I took the lead on projects and they had no problem with that. I like to wear cologne every day, just to remind myself and the guys that I was still very much a woman. I also like to wear my dress greens at least once a week while we were at home at Van Hill. One of the guys liked to smell my arm, where I dabbed cologne from wrist to the crook of the elbow, so I'd wear a different one every day. One day I was in the colonel's office delivering some papers or something. He wasn't there, but my arm sniffer saw me. It was early in the morning and no one else was around. Since I was in my dress greens, I provocatively slid my left arm out of my jacket, extended my arm toward him, tilted my head back, closed my eyes. His joyous nose had worked its way upward from my wrist when the colonel walked in. He cleared his throat, shook his head, and walked out. That was so embarrassing that it was the last time of the sniffing episodes. I left the Army after only 3 years and eventually found work as a defense contractor. I was once again one of few women among many men. Most of the women were early computer types, and I was the rare ex-military. All of my male coworkers were high-ranking Army or Air Force retirees. Most were labeled senior staff members while I was a staff member, but as we were ex-military, I was generally seen as one of their own. Of course, there were situations where I was mistaken for a secretary or a subordinate. One day, a new hiree became my office mate. I could tell immediately that this guy had a big chip on his shoulder and would need some training. Rather than introducing himself as, say, John Smith, he said, Lieutenant Colonel Smith. Nice to meet you, John, I replied. First of all, I wasn't going for the officer jargon because we weren't in the military. And second, I guess he didn't realize that lieutenant colonels were a dime a dozen around there. One day, shortly after, he had the gall to ask me to make some copies for him. I told him I'd be glad to show him how to use the copier. He said he couldn't leave the classified papers on his desk. I told him I'd stay there so he could go. For a blowhard, he was a quick learner. I was the second woman and the first Black person to be invited into a decades-old community service club in Nokesville. I became the first female president while still being the only Black person and woman. The first had moved away. Of course, many left when the first woman joined, and more left after I joined. But I proved myself to be to the many remaining members. I did whatever was needed and was seen as an active member, not a female member. Likewise, I was the first woman invited into the Nokesville Lions Club. Again, I was an active, not female member. Thankfully, my Me Too potentials are well behind me, and I'm grateful that I went through life without major incidents. I wouldn't dare laugh at any victim, but I can laugh at myself. Except for my short marriage, was I so comfortable around men that they never really saw me as a desirable woman? Ever? That's it. Thank you.
I like it, Gail. I like your memoir stuff. I really do. You're doing awesome.
Thanks.
Keep bringing those. I love them.
Oh, okay. And so now what do I do with my mute?
I love them too.
And Alice is here and she loves them too.
Oh, thank you. And so now I unmute, or what do I do now?
I can do that. I can mute you. There you go. Let's go over to Katherine Gotthardt. Katherine.
Hello.
Hello.
It is good to be here. All right, I have 3 short poems from my book, Late April. And the first one is called Stepping Out. Have you ever stepped out on that wide first step, the landing, the top one, looked down like you were on a ledge and said, that's a long, steep way. Better hold the railing. That's called getting old. We used to slide down the stairs, butts bumping against the edges, turning carpets into a slide, giggling. Remember that? It wasn't long ago. But now, we call that a fall. Too bad. Thank you. This next one is called On Call. Pain is an aging police officer. It sleeps lightly, still on call. It moves slowly sometimes, especially in the morning, when it slides its legs over the side of the bed, puts sore feet on the floor and stands, but it always carries a pistol. And this last one is called Peace Wanting. Peace is a staple food. We starve without it, so we eat each other's souls instead, until we're just about dead. Stupid zombies. That's it. Thank you.
That's good. Oh, thank you, Katherine, very much. Let's go, Anant. Let's have him. You're up.
Hi all. Brian, John, I'm going to read a chapter from a novella that I started to write and then forgot. So I'm trying to complete it this November. Let's see. It's called Evenings by the Elves, and this chapter is titled Amanda. It's not biographical, but a lot of places from Virginia, appear into the text. Amanda works 2 jobs. First half the week, she works at a gym. Second, at the Players. Sometimes she doubles her weekend shifts at the Players. The place is on fire on Fridays and Saturday nights. The pool tables are flooded with people carrying shiny cues in plush leather bags. Guys and girls oozing with the confidence that comes with sports gear. Amanda and her colleagues make sure they drink a little every now and then. She doesn't bother how they play. She knows it all too well. They are all amateurs, no matter how bad assish they show up. There are a few loners too, like Nam here, sitting at number 3. He sits there and drinks, minds his own business, tips the barkeeps well at times. Hey, miss, what's that drink y'all serve in copper mugs? Nam asks her. He's not the talkative kind, but tries to make some conversation when he's drunk or about to be. Nam has had a couple of vodka tonics tonight. He's fed up with the drafts. They give him heartburn. Oh, you mean mule? Amanda chirps in her sweet little voice. Nam notices the sweetness in her voice for the first time. Man, this girl is sweet. Would you like to try it? She asks him, with her eyebrows slightly raised in a sort of questioning manner. Sure, if you don't mind. The copper mug is in front of Nam after a few minutes. Vodka with a bunch of ginger. Nam tries to feel the taste of alcohol. Thanks, miss. Appreciate it. He says it in a playful manner. Not a problem. Amanda smiles at him and gets back to sorting something behind the bar. They are a busy pair of hands, these barkeeps. Nam likes to observe them. They are adept at keeping the work right while being watched at. It's a great quality. Nam thinks to himself, man, I'd be irritated if someone stares at me while I work. Evenings like these are particularly strange. There is a solace attached to them. Noise sinks in to the stupor and fades away. This evening has brought a calm to him that reflects like a wave on the muted lights at the place. Amanda has been observing him for some time now. She tries to think his story. What's the deal with this guy? She has seen him a couple of times, mostly on his own. Working in a bar is like working with people's stories. People confide, narrate. They speak what they never meant to share. Talking to people from across this bar is like peeping into their lives. Bars are easier places for conversations that would otherwise be considered prying. The more days you spend behind the bar, the better you start to think you're good at taking guesses at people. She gets distracted by Bob, who is on and on about an energy drink he has found online. Man, he says with a lit up face, this shit's crazy. It keeps me alive on these long shifts. He tries to recommend it to Amanda. She doesn't like it. Too much caffeine is not good for your heart. Google has enriched her understanding on health and nourishment. She's a fitness freak, always attempting to cross the daily target of 10,000 steps. She and some of other girls at the bar have got a group going. They compete with each other on the steps count. Some of the guys working with her are smokers, periodically dipping into their vapes. The smoke irritates her. So does Bob. At least that's what Nam thinks about them from the distance. Nam wants to speak with her, but does not want to appear pushy. He hesitates a lot. It's an old habit of his. Amanda senses it and strolls towards him. You doing okay there? She asks. You want me to refill your glass? Nam willingly nods. He's still not able to say anything to her as he struggles to find a conversation picker. He's not so good at small talk. So where do you work? She asks him. I do a desk job, the 9 to 5 kind. Do you like it? Well, I guess so. I get paid on time. He shrugs. That is odd. It is odd for him to do. He gets embarrassed by this high schoolish gesture of his. Clears the throat and manages to blurt out a couple of sentences. She's good enough, manages to get Nam talking for the next half an hour. By the end of their little chit-chat, Norm has suddenly become aware of Amanda's hometown, her likes and dislikes, a couple of names too. Sweetwater. The name sticks in his mind. A dusty little town in Texas with a single street light. No one would notice if you sped or broke the light. Burgers with real meat and not soya patties. Friendly people struggling to get by in a closing town. Virginia is so far away from the little Sweetwater, he thinks. For absolutely no reason, he checks the distance in miles on Google Maps. It's a little mind pauser he uses at times. Distance between here and Antarctica. Satellite views of the Arctic. Some of the loneliest places on the earth. His mind swings back and forth. Focus, he scolds self. It's 11 p.m. already and he has to leave. Doesn't want to miss work tomorrow. He asks her for the check. Let's see the damage. He cracks a joke. $50 and some cents. I got to tip her good. He tries to think a good number. Don't have to bribe her. He puts a respectable digit there and gets up to leave. I guess I'll see you around then. Sure, I'm usually here on Thursdays through weekends. Good talking to you. Take care, have a good night. She throws a bunch at him. He manages to say good night. I have to ask her. I should have. Maybe the next time. Should have at least asked her for her number. But then again, she was just being nice. She was just being cordial out of common courtesy. Norm's mind throws a few boulders at him as he slows into the night. That was the chapter from the novel. I hope I didn't bore you.
No, nicely done. Yep.
Thank you.
Brings back my time. I was a bartender in college, so
you were?
Oh yeah, I was right there with you. I was reliving it again. So yep.
Thank you.
Let's see. Let's go over to Tabatha Robinson. I wonder, is this Tabatha? Is this your first time? Is she still there?
Yes, it is.
Nice, first timer. Everybody, welcome, first time. All right, first time becomes long time. Excellent. All right, Tabatha, take it away.
Okay, just 1 second. So what I'm reading is the first chapter of, I don't know if it's a novel, novella. I haven't quite figured that out yet, but it's the first chapter and it's called Something to Hope For. 2 levels at the end of a dead-end street, not a cul-de-sac, just a dead end. It had a porch made of wood planks painted green and a matching green bench swing hanging from the ceiling. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. The bathroom didn't have a bathtub or a shower or a sink, if I remember correctly. It had a toilet-shaped bowl with a hole that led to the drain. There was no water or flushing. To flush, you had to fill an old used Clorox bottle with water from the concrete utility sink in the kitchen and go back to the bathroom to pour it down the toilet. To bathe, you had to fill a big bowl with water, grab a bar of soap and a rag, and stand in the kitchen as it had the only running water in the house and wash off. Not glamorous. These days, it would have been condemned. Maybe even then, if anyone with that kind of power had checked it out. It was my favorite place in the world. When I was a kid, I picked going to Grandma's house over anywhere else. Grandma and I would walk to the campus of James Madison University because I liked to see the smokestacks and the ducks. Or we'd walk to Farm Bureau and Grandma would buy me stickers. I always tried to find stickers or a keychain that had my name on it. They never did. We would walk to Midway, which is a little mom and pop grocery convenience store behind her house. We walked everywhere. Grandma didn't drive. I remember my grandfather's car sitting in front of her house for years after he died. I'm not sure whatever happened to it. That was a long time ago. Today, I'm standing in a big parking lot around where I think my grandmother's house once stood. The Midway is gone, and the dead-end street, and the Farm Bureau, and Grandma. I stood there in the empty parking lot, not really understanding why I came in the first place. What was I hoping to find? A little bit of that happiness I used to feel long ago when a sticker and a hot dog would make my day? I looked at my old Toyota Corolla. It used to be tan about a decade ago, but it was quickly losing the war against dirt and rust. I guess I shouldn't complain. It got me here. Not sure where it will need to get me to next. I sat down on the place where I think they paved over my grandmother's house, and I leaned against one of my car's dirty tires. The hard metal of the hubcap pressed into the back of my gray hoodie, and the cold pavement seeped through my favorite pair of worn-out jeans. Everything I had left in the world was packed in that old rusty car with 4 balding tires. I stared at my worn-out chucks. Grandma was married with 4 kids by the time she was my age. She was raising kids and watching everyone else's kids for next to nothing. With the little bit of money she earned and whatever money my grandfather brought, she managed to clothe and feed not just her own children, but the kids she babysat too. And the collection plate got some of her hard-earned money every Sunday without fail. I'm fairly sure Grandma never sat in an empty parking lot wondering where she was going to go. She didn't have that luxury. Her life was set by the time she was my age, and she was too busy trying to keep up with it. There were no answers here in this parking lot. I rubbed my eyes. The stars were getting dimmer and the sky was getting lighter. It would be morning soon, and the quiet, empty parking lot I was sitting in would start to fill up with college kids parking their cars before rushing off to one class or another. Hours ago, I had been sitting on my bed, staring at the bare walls of my rented studio apartment in a high-rise in Arlington, Virginia. I never had liked the place. It felt like living in a hotel, a bland hotel with no character. But character costs money, especially in Arlington. At 24 years old and out of college for nearly 2 years, I thought I would have more direction for my life. A relationship, a calling, something. I remember them calling my name Tess McCabe at Virginia Tech's graduation and having the sudden urge to run away. Until then, the goals had been clear and set. Graduate high school and then go to college. But what happens after you graduate college? Not knowing what I wanted to do, I went with the flow and did what everyone else was doing and applied for jobs in and around DC. I finally landed a job at a government consulting. I'd have the ambition of a lot of my peers at work. I was going through the motions of work, not standing out for being bad or great. I was on the metro on the way to my bland studio apartment after working at my job, which I had no passion for, when I got a text from my cousin. I had missed 2 calls from her as well. Cell service on metro was spotty in places, and sometimes a text was all you could hope to send or receive. Hey, haven't you heard from you in a while? Hope things are going okay. I hate to tell you this over text, but you aren't answering your cell. Lee passed away. She was in a car accident Thursday night. I know you two were close. Call me if you have a chance. Her family is working on funeral arrangements. I think they would love to see you there. Lee was one of the many kids Grandma babysat when I was young. We were inseparable when I was there. She was my best friend as a kid, and we liked to tell people that didn't know better we were sisters. Though with her fire red curly hair and my dark brown straight as an arrow hair, I'm pretty sure no one believed us. As we got older, we didn't see each other as much, but whenever we were together, the closeness was still there. I hadn't seen her since the last time she came to see me at college. We were both finishing our senior year. Since then, our contact had been reduced to a couple of phone calls on birthdays and some posts on Facebook. I don't remember getting to my stop and squeezing off the metro with all the other rush hour commuters trying to get home from their own jobs. I don't remember walking the 5 blocks to my apartment, and I don't know how many hours I sat on my bed staring at the walls. I'd like to say I was thinking about my friend, but I honestly don't know what I was thinking about. At some point, I grabbed the trash bags. I started throwing clothes in bags and stacking them by the front door. I threw my business clothes in one bag and left a note for them to be donated. I started making endless trips to my old car in the underground garage, carrying bags of clothes and stacks of books. My apartment had come furnished. It never had felt like a home. I didn't have a lot of personal belongings. Still, my car trunk and back seat were crammed full by the time I was done. I put my keys and garage access card in the night drop box at the rental office in the building lobby and walked into the garage. On the trunk of my car, I set my laptop down and sent emails to the building rental office and my manager at work. I didn't think either place would make too much of a fuss about my abrupt departure. My lease only had 1 more month left, and my manager wasn't going to have a hard time finding someone to fill my shoes. Hopefully she would find someone with more passion for the place than I had. On some level, I knew that I was acting rashly, that normal people didn't quit their jobs and move out of their apartments at the news of a friend that they hadn't seen in years dying. Still, I got in my car. It was 3 a.m. when I pulled out of the garage and got on the exit for 66 West. And now I'm here watching the sunrise in an empty parking lot and trying to figure out what's next. That's it.
I said, good job, first timer. That was awesome. Excellent job.
Thanks.
I love I'm thinking about my grandmas that I had. My gosh. I think everyone's grandmothers probably are like, oh my gosh, what they did. So
Yeah.
Good stuff. Paulette, are you ready? All right. Paulette, unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So I have two poems. My first one is an invitation, and the second one is not titled yet because it's fairly new. So, an invitation. While COVID-19 is globe-trotting, hopping from host to host like pollinators flitting from flower to flower, a mask is a must-have accessory. The unmasked is an open invitation to the coronavirus saying, come in. And the second one, untitled, in 2020, the year of coronavirus, our lives are upended by chaos, changes crash into our lives at lightning speed. We're hemmed in by questions, forced to isolate from each other, mentally exhausted, and we find ourselves craving normalcy like an addict. On Monday, October 19, 2020, I contemplated all the time I now have on my hands due to the isolation from COVID-19. What do I do with all this time? Binge watch another TV show, start a new hobby, clean out another junk drawer, read another book or finish a book I started, write another poem. I settled on tackling the spice cupboard. Now my dining room table overflows with bottles of seasonings and spices. Here's a short list. On a container of Jamaican curry powder, December 2010. On a bottle of garlic bread sprinkle, December 13th, 2017. On a container of baking soda, February 27th, 2014. On a container of coconut flour, yes, coconut flour, April 1st, 2015. On a container of cornstarch, April 20th, 2017. On packs of yeast, November 2017. On a bottle of balsamic vinegar, January 23rd, 2019. On an unopened bottle of Italian seasoning, February 2019. On an unopened bottle of sweet cooking rice wine, March 11th, 2019. There's enough seasoning and spices to make several meals, but they're now bound for the trash can, long, long after their expiration date. COVID-19 will expire. We just don't know the date.
Fantastic. I loved it.
Oh, come on out here.
I loved.
I like that connection. Yeah.
I love the expiration dates. Does anybody show of emojis? Anybody out there have been doing that? The going in and doing the cleaning out.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Brooke and I
don't know the date yet.
Made,
it's about to drive me crazy though.
All right. Brooke and I, we found Duncan Hines boxes from like 11 and 12 years ago, and by God, we made them. We made those cakes. Yes, we did. And,
why?
And I was like, I could eat this, but they're like, oh, we got to throw it out. I'm like, but. If we were in The Walking Dead right now, this is a delicacy.
Yeah.
Was that an experiment? Were you doing it just to see if you would live?
Yep. We just did it for the heck of it, because mine was like from 2011 and hers was like from 2014.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. Let me see. Ruth.
Hello.
Ruth from Texas.
Ruth from Texas. Okay. I'm reading a piece from a novel. I just want to give you a little background. This is a mother and daughter who are meeting. The daughter was abused by the mother's boyfriend, and it's a lot of horrible things happened, and now her mother lies dying in the bed. So here goes. She lay still in the large bed, her thick snow white hair brushed and braided to the right side of her head. Her breath waited, her heart waited. She lay in limbo and stasis until her daughter arrived. She lay waiting for Lilly, praying for her arrival. Her body waited, praying for Lilly to come. She knew the moment that Lilly stepped into the house. She could see her daughter, imagining her crossing the threshold she promised herself she'd never cross again. Bessie felt her hesitation. She would come though, no matter how hard the journey, she'd come. If nothing else, Bessie knew how to motivate her daughter into confrontation. Bessie could see the blurred outline of Lily's body standing in the doorframe of her bedroom. This must be done. This must be done here. Lilly stared at the space just above the bed. I'm sorry. This must be done. This must be done here. I'm sorry, I lost my place. Okay, Lilly stared at the space just above the headboard of the bed, her eyes and her vision of sight, a line of sight focused and deliberate, her eyelids half masked, hidden in the irises of her eye, her back rigid and cranky, her movements stiff, thought out with careful, painstaking precision. She lingered in the door, scoping out the lay of the room. Only when assured of the difference did she move forward, glaring at the rug pattern as if it were a map into the room, tiptoeing on her toes as if testing the temperature of an expansive, powerful ocean. She tipped her foot in and tumbled into the room as her chest rose and fell erratically. Her lips moved, not the same, they screamed silently. Not the same, they chanted. Not the same, not the same. Bessie looked at her brave daughter on the edge of hope, on the edge of terror, on the edge of a prayer. She watched her daughter with eyes stretched painfully wide, as with every blink, a fine layer of sand dug into her eyes, creating razor red rims of irritation. She watched her do what she had never been able to do, return to the place where hell first ensnared her. All cried out. The red rims of Bessie's eyes seemed to bleed into the whites, and she held herself centered and helping her child walk to her bedside. Feeding off the courage Bessie saw in her daughter's eyes, Bessie worked to reflect the bravery she saw there back into her daughter's struggle. This was a room of old horrors and well-remembered terrors, nasty, dirty secrets and shame. The emotional and exhaustive effort made moments seem like hours to the mother and daughter. In the room populated with convoluted, tangled, intense memory, remembered and forgotten moments. Lilly arrived at her mother's bedside to finally look at her across generations of memory and ghosts until they both settled into their own twisted story of yesterday. They stared at one another, turning the pages of what was in sync for the first time in a lifetime of being together. They saw the events of yesterday, knowing that each passage of time held its own enmeshed and individual impact. Across their lives together, Bessie reached for connection, and it rendered itself as, the ceiling is open sky, Lilly. I remember the tiles too. I made sure the ceiling was open skies for us both. Lilly slid her eyes to the top corner, tilting her head slowly left, and glanced at the ceiling tentatively. Spying the flash of lightning and stars, she tilted back her head to examine the beautiful mural splashed across the ceiling, wild and somehow violently free, strikings of lightning with occasional bits of fire at their apex, crossed the midnight indigo stars, twinkling in bits of sparkling light in the far west end of the ceiling, to fade into cool grays of fluffy clouds that floated into the bright rays of sun in the far edge of the corner. The bed itself was deep mahogany, dressed in bright white sheets, pillowcases and thick white downy spread covered with delicate white lace. Lilly whispered, "It's beautiful, Mama." And Bessie breathed deeply for the first time in years. "Thank you, Lilly. Thank you, Lilly," Bessie breathed out. "Thank you, Lilly." Lilly stood by her mother's bedside. Lilly stood by her mother's deathbed, still and quiet. They waited for the next right moment. Bessie spoke first. "That little girl of yours is something else, isn't she? Yes, it doesn't have nothing to do with me though. She just came out that way, Lilly softly laughed, stiff. She's your child. Everything about her has something to do with you, Lilly. Lilly thought at that moment of the other child. Whether she wanted it to be or not, everything about that child has something to do with Lilly too. Lilly thought of all the old hatred she had felt. She remembered the desolation at the riverside. Perhaps all those dreams of release, all those prayers begging that it not be true. Maybe a lifetime of wishing had come to fruition and laid itself at her feet, the thing that she hated. No, Florence, not a thing. Florence was dead. Lilly dragged air through her clenched teeth, but she was no longer that girl, that narcissistic shell of a child running from the river's edge. Lilly had been gifted with so much love, more than enough to fill a once empty heart. She had cried out and her loneliness had been enveloped in acceptance. I am so glad, Lilly mouthed the words without sound as Bessie lay still, silently observing her child process this moment between them. Lily's chest expands as she breathes deeply, exhaling the whisper of love and joy. Gwen's father, little big boy, loved his daughter and her mother both with a strong and enduring kind of invocation. There are a long list of names of people who had shown Lilly love. Mother Pearl, even Sam at work. Her life had been full of love, but in desperation and fear, locked in yesterday, she gave power to an old injustice and released an old held hatred that months ago finally did what she had avoided doing for 30 years, taking a life. The weight of this settled on Lily's shoulders as she slid into the recliner near her mother's bedside. No matter what had been done to her in the past, today, now, there was blood on her hands. She wasn't going to wait and see. She was going to cast off her hair shirt and do as her daughter said. Seek redemption now in the midst of pain and guilt and the river of shame and regret. She's going to drag herself to the shore and seek forgiveness by being willing to listen to someone she blamed, someone she hated and loved with an unreasonable fierceness. The Spengali, the curator of the well of desolation that ate at her and shaped her life. There is no way now to name herself blameless. Her blessing of redemption demanded that Lilly pay the price of her own salvation. She would never understand her mother. She may never forgive her, but the sacrifice of Florence's blood paid the price of her submission. Lilly would listen to her mother for perhaps the first time, free of rage and fear. Lilly would listen and hear Bessie. Florence's suicide was the blood sacrifice that made this possible. I am my mother's daughter through and through, selfish and self-serving beyond measure. But those years of living with him obliterated the fact that I was my mother's little girl too. In Florence, I saw all the forgiveness and honesty of my mother, and in my selfishness, I cultivated in her, in Florence, to the point of obsession. I ruined your life, Lilly, and I ruined Florence's life as well. See, in my mother, I celebrated all the gentle, loving things and neglected anything that spoke to her strength and determination and survival. My mother stood strong against her father in support of a husband that couldn't have been anything other than a bone marrow, deep disappointment to him. My mother believed beyond her grave in the potential of daddy. Right or wrong, she believed in him. I didn't raise you at all but to discipline you and ignore you when I chose to. And still you are my mother's image. All her strength, all her determination, all her endurance lie in your face, in the journey of your life. But that daughter of yours, Lilly, Bessie gestures toward Gina, who, after bringing in iced tea, sat at her mother's feet, leaning against her legs. And that child there is a blessing of balance, of strength, survival, love, and determination that calls to mind mother's whole and true person. In her, there is a blessing of redemption. As Lilly listened, Bessie sat up and slid to the edge of the bed. Raising carefully to her feet, she grabbed the dressing gown, tied the belt. Bessie sat on the opposite end of the recliner, facing Lilly, creating a haphazard triangle of generations. The granddaughter on the floor at her mother's feet. Bessie's daughter opposite facing her. Bessie, the great-grandmother to one of the women in the room, and mother to the other, sat still, ramrod straight and rigid. Facing Gina, she looks through her, and starts. Voice soft, shaky and raw. She needed to do this. All I knew of the world from the time I was born until I was 9 years old was mother.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. What a punch. Oh. But Ruth?
Yes.
I love it. I'm telling you, that's what you're the type that always brings that pop. So guys, I've already asked her sometime to the first story she ever read was The Piano. It was a fantastic piece, and it was a memoir. And the one right after that, it was a really powerful story like this one. I was like, I run up to her, I said, did that really happen? And she's like, no, I made it all up. I was like, oh. So I always have to ask, is that which one is it? So thank you, Ruth. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you coming from Texas.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's go to something light. How about John Cowgill? John Cowgill, come and give us something light after that gut wrencher right there.
All right, I'll give you all something light. And of course, as you all know, next weekend is Halloween. So in the spirit of Halloween, I decided to read my first story, The Great Vampire of Olde. It was a Halloween night in the very tiny village of Olde. There was a chill in the air, and the moon was full. The great vampire of Olde was going to and fro and fro and to, looking for someone to suck their blood. It was very late in the evening, and he had yet to see anybody. For so many Halloween nights, he had many people to suck blood from. But this very night was different. He had yet to see anybody in the tiny village until finally a young lady wearing a black velvet coat, blue jeans, and red high-heeled shoes was walking down the street. He turned into a bat and flew closer to him. He almost came upon her when a streetlight came on and it blinded him. And he changed back into a vampire and shielded his eyes from the light. And the light went off. He looked around and saw the lady walking down the street. He changed into a bat again and flew towards her, only to be hit by a passing truck and whacked into a nearby tree. Becoming a vampire again, he regained his senses. He saw the woman walking down the street, but she stopped. He sat up and watched as she was pulling off her shoes. He stood up and hit his head on a branch that was stretched out above him. He slapped the branch with frustration and the focus on the woman who was walking barefoot, holding her red high-heeled shoes in her hands. But she stopped to look at her phone. He became a bat and flew closer to her. And this time, he was right behind her. She did not notice that he was there. He changed back into a vampire. He opened his mouth wide, aiming for her neck. And she passed some gas. The great vampire of Olde was out cold. Days later, he came through. Wolfman was beating him around to wake him up. What happened? He asked as he came to his senses. Nothing, Wolfman said as he pulled him to his feet. She was just testing out the old exhaust system. And that is the great vampire of Olde. Now,
Alice just wanted me to say that was the least scariest vampire story she's ever heard.
Yeah. So, and we're going to miss Brittany because she's heading out. but I can read the next story. It's called Amanda. It was a cold, frigid Halloween night in Cumberland, Maryland. I was standing out at the old train station taking photos. I walked to the south end and saw a young woman jogging up the old Chesapeake and Ohio towpath towards the station. I turned towards the tracks, but I heard the sounds of pounding feet. I glanced at the woman as she arrived at the top of the steps, and she jogged into the center of the old waiting platform. Her jet black hair flowed from her old Pittsburgh Steelers cap down to her shoulders. Her yellow thick coat reflected the street lights. She had on gray gloves, black bicycle pants, and was barefoot. "Excuse me," she glanced at me. "But has the last train for the day arrived yet?" "It arrived some time ago," I replied. "Not possible. It always comes at this time. I'm waiting for someone who was on the train. I assume that you're not from around here." "I'm not. I'm just here for the night," I said. "Welcome," she said, as she was doing some stretches. "Thank you," I told her. "Aren't your feet cold?" "I don't feel a thing," she smiled at me as she did her stretches. "Anyway, it is Halloween. I hope that you can find a party. There are a few in town." "What are you doing?" I asked. "Getting ready to jog home," she stopped and smiled. "I have a long way to go." "It's kind of dark," I slowly approached her. "I'm fine," she smiled and blew me a kiss. "I do this all the time. Nice to meet you, but I have a long jog ahead of me. Bye-bye." Before I could respond, she jogged to the opposite end of the depot and went down the backside. Although she was a very nice lady, but I assumed that I would never see her here again. The very next morning, I arrived at a local restaurant where I was going to have breakfast. The host sat me down and I looked at my menu. I looked up and saw an old photo of a lady wearing a white bonnet. I peeked at my menu, but I glanced at the photo again. "Hello," my waiter arrived. "Would you like something to drink?" "Chocolate milk and apple juice," I replied. But the photo began to grab my attention. "You're looking at the old photo," the waiter interrupted. "She is very famous around here." "She is a very lovely lady, I continued to glance at the photo. "She would have been a nice lady to meet." "You're a little late," the waiter went on. "If you would have been here at the old depot last night, you would have seen her here." "Well, sorry," I laughed, "but I saw a gorgeous lady wearing her jogging clothes and with the yellow coat and the Steelers cap," the waiter interrupted. "And she was barefoot." I said, "Right." I was completely shocked. "That's the same lady in that photo." I began to stutter. "That lady that I saw at the train last night is the lady in that photo." "It's very hard to believe," the waiter sat down at the table. "She came to the train station every night hoping to see her love on the train." "What happened to him?" I asked. "No one knows for sure," he continued. "There were many stories. All that is confirmed is that he left town and never came back." Curiously, I asked, "What happened to her?" "Sadly," the waiter continued, "she contracted an illness and died at a young age, about 19 in fact, back in the year 1855. I went into deep thought. "She came from one of the lock houses where she lived with her family," the waiter continued. "Her attire had changed through the years, but she still comes to the station." I thought about the story. "What is her name?" "Amanda," he replied. "Amanda," I repeated. "Will she come out tonight?" "Maybe," the waiter replied. It was the evening, and I walked to the old train station, and I waited and I waited and waited. It was colder than the night before. It got colder and colder, but she did not come. Maybe it was not her night. You have returned, she snuck behind me. You must be waiting for the train too. I turned to see her wearing the same Pittsburgh Steelers cap, bright yellow coat, and bare feet. Actually, I told her, I came to see you. A tear started to roll out of her eyes. I never thought anyone would want to see me, she wept. I've been coming here to see my man to come on the train, but he has never come. I do not know what happened to him. He is coming, is he? I didn't know what to say. The question puzzled me. I do not know, I told her. At least I have one friend to see tonight. She smiled with a streak of tears on her face. Will you be here tomorrow night? I thought about it as I lived so far away. Sure, I said. Great. She was very happy. I will see you tomorrow night. Good night, Amanda. She paused. I have not heard that name in a very long time. Thank you. There was a bright twinkle in her eye. She jogged along the track bed and out of sight. As I watched her leave, I had to wonder how it was going to get back here. And that is the story of Amanda. And happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy Halloween, John. Thank you. All right. Alice, are you ready? Hold on.
She's trying to get me.
All right.
To speak. Tap to speak, right?
Okay. Am I on?
Yes. Hold on. I have to mute. There, try it.
Am I on?
Yeah, but why don't you just turn that off? Because we're getting reverb. Come over here and read it.
Yeah. Oh, she has to go inside.
Grass, a confession. John's always trying to get me to go over the edge into the darkness, into a life that he thinks that I've never enjoyed. So I wrote this poem called Grass. I love grass in all forms. It's my true delight. I use it for comfort and to soften bad news all day, imbibing its pleasure, even some nights. I work hard to keep it controlled, my soul to restore. The next door neighbors watch me enjoying and disappear inside their doors. I know I should not obsess over this habit of mine. My friends don't mention it as often, now giving me more chances to feel sublime. So help me keep my secret, hoping I can trust you again this time. Oh no, my sod is drying up. John's laughing, so I can't finish. Oh no, my sod is drying up. Must water. Must mow, grass, must woe, must end this rhyme.
Oh my gosh.
Grass.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny because every time you call her, she's like, I'm out mowing my grass. I'm out mowing my grass. Oh my gosh, she mows that grass all the time. She was gone with the summer, and I'm like, all right, I'll come up and water your grass. So I get her this nice, I didn't like the sprinkler system so she had. So I went out and I got her this nice water sprinkler, covers more area. Nope, 9 o'clock at night, Alice has to go out and mow her grass right over the thing that I just bought her. Yep, so the night, she will mow morning, noon, and night. Oh my goodness. All right. Yes. All right. David Holloway, you are next.
David, you're muted. David, you're muted.
David, you're muted.
Is this David? Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. You want me to turn it off
Great.
or not?
Yeah, if you could turn off the recording, that would be awesome. Thanks.
Thank you, David. I like science fiction, so I was into that. So thank you very much. Well, yeah, but I think
it is science fiction.
I thought it was science fiction because he said 2024. So yeah, I was like, he was definitely dropping in but real. It was definitely
real
right
as now.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I like that type of stuff. Yep. Historical, science fiction stuff like that. Let me see. She's way at the bottom. Kimberly Ray, you are up.
Hi guys, I've got 2 poems. First one, I've got one that's about being blindsided. It's called You Never Knew. You think you know a guy, years, months, weeks, day in and day out, conversations exchanged, how things were left unsaid, how we chose or chose not to be, how we hide behind the way we speak, how we say or don't say the things we mean. You think you know a guy, and suddenly he's a stranger. You never knew his thoughts, never knew the things he's done, never knew the reasons why things have come undone. You think you know a guy. Now he's an ass, a jerk, in a midlife crisis. He doesn't know how to deal. He'd rather excuse responsibility and break away. You think you know a guy. He only showed what he wanted you to see. Now he's come clean. No more pretending. You think you know a guy, but did you ever really know him at all? And the next one I've got is called Sheltered in Place. They will never know the stillness, the silence, as the world hushes, as when the first snowflakes drop out of the sky. They will never feel the crisp air or see white blanket the fields, as it does every year. Kept indoors, safe and warm, where humidity breathes, where mist showers from above, and crawling critters burrow, where life continues. Under wraps to avoid a deep freeze, never a first blossom of the year, but life that sustains, returning again and again. Among rows of green as infants in a nursery, this is the only place the sprouts now grow. Under a careful eye, we're both determined to stay alive. That's it, thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly, much appreciated. We'll move to Michael Crowley. Let's see if he can, I wonder if we'll get some song tonight. I do love his background, the eerie background for Halloween. Yeah.
Yes, that's a photo collage that I created in Photoshop. So anyway, and the first poem is a Halloween sort of related poem. It's called A Shadow of Her Former Self. I have scraped, I have painted, and still her image remains. She moves from room to room as I try to escape her. When I leave the apartment, she moves down the hallway beside me. Her image is on the wall of the elevator. It moves along the sidewalk, keeping up with me as I run. She is on the windshield of my car, transparent enough for me to drive. I cry as I've cried so many times before. I drive to the columbarium where her ashes lie in apparent unrest. I know you blame me, but it was not my fault. I touch her marble plaque. It is cold, freezing. My hand sticks to it. I pull violently away. Blood drips from my fingertips. She has attached herself to my eyeballs now. Whichever way I look, her semi-transparent image hovers on my gaze. I close my eyes. I see her clearly through the darkness. Maybe she is right. Maybe I did kill her. She did not run when they came. I swear to you, though, I never wanted them to find her. She loved me. I loved her. Maybe, yes, I did love her. I swear I did. I was just afraid, terrified I would be reported for harboring one of them. I should have saved us. The blood continues to fall from my hand. I see her as I stare at the pool of blood. I should have saved us. She was a part of us, not one of them. She was part of the us of our love and the us of our humanity. I sit down and see her image as I watch the pool of blood grow. Okay, that was the shadow of her former self. Now, I have been, a long time, I have not worked with form. And I decided, I've been getting emails from Writer's Digest. I subscribe because I'm working on that novel. And one of the things every month, they give you a description of a different poetry form. And every week they give you poetry prompts. So I decided to combine them. And the form is, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correct, Masnavi, and it's couplets. There are either your choice, either 10 or 11 syllables per line. But what's different about it, it doesn't rhyme at the end of the line. It rhymes within the line. And the writing prompt was, your character sets out to find who the culprit of a misdeed is, and the guilty person is not who they expected it would be. And this is called My Dragonfly. I love my dragonfly. He's gone, and I try to guess at the culprit, that evil bandit who stole my dear insect. I try to collect my thoughts and determine who is this vermin. I think of John Babbitt, who I've seen covet the blue, gold, and green wings that pull my heartstrings. I am filled with blind rage. He deserves a cage filled with wasps and bees. This fate would appease the woe deep in my soul for the joy he stole. God himself would punish a crime so brutish. With my mind gone ajar, I jumped into my car and I went to his house, where I saw his spouse watering the front lawn. She tells me he's gone to a class he's in. I jumped from my skin when I learned his study, entomology. My tears formed waterfalls that drained my eyeballs. Home I went for my gun. I killed the cruel one who had defiled my pet. I now owed a debt that I'd pay with malice. He had been callous and would now die in pain, for I would refrain from, where is it? I'm sorry, I messed up. From making his death quick. I would wound and kick till he begged for the end, this make-believe friend. Trapped in the parking lot, he saw I was hot. Confused, and he inquired what had transpired. I could not understand how he could demand. I explained my just wrath, that cold psychopath. When he had been so base, I could see no trace of sincere contrition or grave admission. This is when I doubted, yet still I shouted, you will die in God's pit. For what, you dimwit? For Flit, as he was called. I sagged and I bawled. I wouldn't hurt your bug, you silly old lug. I could see right away I was wrong that day. My friend was innocent. I'd erred in judgment. I went home and I sighed. With my thoughts, I tried to imagine his fate, but I could just wait. Soon my girlfriend came back. I told of my lack. I gave flit to the air, for he belongs there. I said, have you no brain? She said, you're insane. Now I'm left on my own. All my loves have flown.
Fantastic, Michael. It was awesome. Made me think of Poe in this this month. Awesome job.
Okay, and I'm going to end with a song. And this is one called I Keep Losing My Car, Piece by Piece. I hadn't got off the beltway before my oil light came up red. It was the eternal floating delay, road construction behind and ahead. In Maryland, I lost my muffler. In Pennsylvania, another pipe. In Toledo, I blew a tire. In Chicago, my side got swiped. Oh, I keep losing my car, losing it piece by piece. I knew before I left it wasn't up to par. Why didn't I lease? In St. Louis, it was the battery. It died, I had to get one new. Near Little Rock, I lost my license plate. A loose screw and off the mountain it flew. In Wichita, my wipers wiped out. My transmission was Tulsa's take. In Denver, a fender bender, playing my bumper and emergency brake. Oh, I keep losing my car, losing it piece by piece. I knew before I left it wasn't up to par. Why didn't I lease? In Las Vegas, I ran out of gas and my credit line was in doubt. In Los Angeles, the city police stopped me because all of my lights burned out. Near San Francisco, I ran out of dough because of master and gas company cars. So now I'm broke and deep in debt, but I feel lucky in one regard. I finally lost my car, lost it all over the place. I knew before I left it wasn't up to par. Now the whole damn thing has been replaced, so now I have a new car. I lost it piece by piece. May it travel wide and travel far, and may the old one rest in pieces. That's it.
Very good, Michael. That was fantastic. Thank you very much, and happy Halloween. I like that. All right, Robert, you are up.
Good evening. I'm a writer from Delaware. I'm going to read some satire. This is called Soups, a lost book of the Bible. 1. There came a time when the people of Campbell found their vat empty. The people cried out to the Lord, Lord, why have you let our vat go dry? The water in the vat separated from the broth. The people spooned their prayers, but the Lord did not bring forth soup. 2. The people abandoned idols and returned to the Lord. All of the idols of rain had been destroyed. The Lord repurposed rain from a water maker to a soup maker. Rain, as she released water onto the earth, was called by the Lord. Rain, you've been a releaser of water. Come with me and be a maker of soup. Rain followed the Lord and became the soup maker of Campbell's. 3. Later, in the time of Christ, Mary Magdalene washed Christ's feet. Mary, to make ends meet, worked as the whore of Nazareth and made soup. Mary was boiling water and herbs and soup splattered onto Mary's eyes. When Mary washed Jesus' feet, Mary cried. Mary's tears souped onto Jesus' feet. When men strained Mary, Jesus souped. Whose veins are filled with blood and not soup shall not spoon the last of the soup. 4. Jesus was in Galilee and entered a walking on water contest. While Jesus won the competition, he was dethroned. It was proven that Jesus did not walk on water. Jesus walked on soup. Jesus, before the walking, spooned mushroom soup onto the Sea of Galilee. The mushrooms separated from the soup and formed mushroom pads. Jesus walked on mushroom pads. It was the soup and not the water. Herod reclaimed Jesus' crown of soup. 5. Still the people's vat was empty. Despite that Mary and Jesus had performed the miracles of the soup. The people asked Jesus to give the sacrament of the soup, but Jesus souped not. Jesus said, I am the only soup of Christ. The people disobeyed the Lord and went to the shores of Galilee. There, with a ladle, the people hit the rock of soup. Soup came forth. The Lord punished his children. For 40 years, the Lord made his children follow the soup of Campbell until they entered a new bowl, the soup of Progresso. So that's the first one.
Oh, that was classic. Oh my gosh.
So let me read you the second one, which is also a comedy. It's called Ernestine Operates. Ernestine was a comic character on television's Laugh-In, 1968, 1973, portrayed by Lily Tomlin. God calls Ernestine. God, connect me to my son. Ernestine, how may I, in all humble servitude, be of assistance? God, son, do I make myself clear? Ernestine, 1 ringy-dingy, 2 ringy-dingy. God, have you reached the party whom I want to speak? Ernestine, your son refused to pay the long distance charges. God, give me his number. Ernestine, I'm sorry, that privilege is privileged information. God, I promise you, Ernestine, the telephone company doesn't care. God, I'll make you. Ernestine, the phone company is not bound by regulations. We are omnipotent. God, I'll get the number myself. The next one is called Ernestine Calls Astronaut Neil Armstrong. Ernestine, 5 ringy-dingy. Neil, who is this? Ernestine, it's the operator to whom you are speaking. Neil, can't speak now, landing on the moon. Ernestine, the phone company doesn't care. Neil, call you after the moonwalk. Ernestine, no, you haven't paid your phone bill. Neil, that's 1 small step for a man. Ernestine, the phone company is cutting you off. Neil, 1 jaw Operator, reconnect me. Ernestine, the phone company is omnipotent on the moon. Neil, Houston, the operator cut me off. Pay the phone bill. This is the last one, it's a short one. Ernestine calls her lover. Ernestine, are you the caller I'm giving my body to? Partner, yes. Are you the caller I'm making a baby with? Does the phone company give maternity leave? Ernestine, no. The phone company is omnipotent. Partner, I heard God and his son were not connected. Ernestine, repeating what a caller says is not gossip. It's the truth. All my ringy dingies for you. That's it.
Thank you, Robert. I liked the Neil Armstrong one. That was really good. All right, and I love your first one. Thank you. All right, where is Thomas? Thomas, you are it. You are our final reader for the night. Turn on that microphone.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay. This first one is a little bit in the Halloween season. It's called Accidents. Excuse me. I quench my thirst on those who close their eyes, pretend they can trust without inspection. Their tender fears are rich flavors that blossom on my tongue and enchant my fevered thoughts. They blindly expect cars to stop and never look. I love to get them to jump. They pretend to be offended, but their heartbeat makes them all liars. Mothers snatch their children's hands as if the fault was not their own. There is a cost for eyes squeezed shut. When the moon rises red and rests upon the corn, when shadows shake their fingers and the wind moans, don't forget to check the locks. See if your phone works. Call a friend or go to a room where your partner is. Anything is better than being alone. Demons dance for chance to enhance what rare, Demons dance for a chance to enhance that rare chance any night when streetlights dim, wheels come off the rim, and alone with broken jack you curse, and as you reach to use the phone, the truck comes and doesn't see you. And in your dark clothes, nor does he notice the thump. Go ahead. Trust your sense of control. Your illusions are where I play, and let fate take its toll. No one notices the accidental death that didn't have to be if these little fools did not assume all is well, and they did not have to watch out for a little devil like me. And that's Accidents.
Love it. Thank you.
It seems a little seasonal. And this next one moves further into other seasons and my own and my own messed up youth. And it's called Devil Double Dare You. This is sort of a prose poem piece. First, of course, I woke early. Christmas morning, I was headed down the stairs, and there it was, the bike, a parent at each end. I unwrapped both of you from it, tore off the bow, gave it to Mom, stood back, looked at it in all its naked glory. It had a life of its own. My bike, a red and chrome Schwinn. Chapter 2. At 10, we were rogues, seeking adventure, pirating dreams from each other. We built tree forts up in the tops of tall pines, nailed 2x4 steps to get to the branches, Local labor was terrified tearing them down. Raced down new asphalt on bikes, jet pilots, race drivers, kings and heroes, inventing as we went along. We held the world in our palm until our mothers called us home for dinner. 3, he told me it was beyond repair. Shook his head in wonder. Not sure how I did it. Didn't get angry, but I never got another one. We had this hill. You could hit killer speeds coming down it. I once tried cornering without braking. We slid clear across the street, left my legs like hamburger and the pants. Well, Mom let Dad whip the cost of the pants out of my rather available rear end. Speaking of hamburger, I left the chain guard off once, had to race to a friend's house. It was one of those times when I just had to race. Got there and found I had run the leg up and down the chain, and the grease and blood and skin had Joan, my friend Mom, always say, "Call me Joan." Almost fainted when she saw it. If she hadn't screamed, I don't think I would have noticed. But the Schwinn died grandly on a hill the day we built the jump. We raced down the hill and ran up the jump and came down after flying. I loved flying. Leapt off the dormer on our Cape Cod with cardboard wings. Didn't fly far. Hit my jaw with a knee and bit my tongue. I became possessed. I had to go higher and farther. I made it longer with old plywood and taller with my friends. Knew I was killer crazy and went and told other friends and parents. Came out on the porches. I put baseball cards on the bike with wooden clothespins because I knew I was making history. I raced down the hill. I started up the ramp. I was airborne. My friends talked about it the rest of the summer and the first month of school. I landed on the rear wheel and the front came down and the forks bent out with a hell of a rake. The old man came back from shore duty 3 days later. Last I ever saw of the bike.